Watch Transit TV right now.
I'm Tochku Michael. Keep watching Transit TV.
Guys, Ugum, I have this question. Is football leveling up? What I mean by that, it looks like the gap between teams now in terms of talent and ability is not as wide as it used to be, which is the reason why we are seeing teams like Crystal Palace win FA Cup in England. We're seeing teams like Newcastle coming up, and teams like City are going end of the season with no trophy. Teams like Real Madrid in Spain are having it out there as well. If you go to Italian Serie A, Inter Milan look like they are the best team in that league, but still they have the last game of the season to try to salvage the title out from Napoli. In France, of course, PSG won. PSG as well, and the Champions League finals. Barcelona have been shaky and they made it to the finals. They've picked all the cups there. You know, last 2 seasons, have Leverkusen come up and win the league in Germany. What do you put this to? It looks, or do you agree with the fact that it looks like football is gradually getting back to where we see massive surprises in games? Like a decade before now, sometimes you go into games, you can't really say who is going to win. For the past 10 years, it looked like sometimes when teams play against City, against Real Madrid, and some other big teams, you can almost say what the result is going to be. But this season, we saw a very, very massive decline in that trajectory.
I agree with you 100%. I think it augurs well for the neutrals, augurs well for every bona fide football fan. I've enjoyed watching football. I mean, I watched Crystal Palace play against Wolves today. What an exciting game, when you have most of the teams, especially in the English Premier League, most of the teams are kind of evenly matched. In every team, you can get 2 or 3 top level players that can decide games. And so you don't see any team and feel like there'll be a walkover. And I can say that for the likes of Southampton. Southampton had Tyler, what's his name? Libling or Tibling? I'm trying to remember his name. Sorry?
Dibling, Tyler Dibling.
Dibling, thank you so much. Yeah. Excellent young player. 19 years or so, 18 or 19. Brilliant dribbler, game changer. I loved watching him for Southampton. When you go to Leicester, you see likes of Canusi that Arsenal are here looking at. So every team has some players that are worth watching, so to speak, and it's leveling up. I love it. I love the fact that it's no longer just come in and like you said, you predict. You walk over and you predict the scores, and the scores are close to what you predicted that they will be. So I long may it continue. I think it's all about the distribution of money. Most teams now are able to get hold of money to sign, talents. And scouting has improved so much. People are able to scout from all over the world. We are hoping, I am a proponent of the African game. We're hoping that we'll find ways to make opportunities more, readily available for African players. Right now it's very difficult to get the average African young player into Europe because of immigration issues and everything going on.
What would you put this down to? That, right now, teams with the so-called big teams find it difficult to win against the small teams, and they actually really give you a game. Yeah, some teams adopt the sit back, the low block philosophy, but some small teams actually go toe-to-toe with big teams. Talking about Fulham, we're talking about Fulham now. City is going to Fulham, and it looks like it's not going to be easy for City. You can imagine. Liverpool won the league this season. Higher than can get 86 points, which means they dropped a lot of points this season. So what do you put this to?
I'd say one for some big teams, they've had some injuries to key players, which has made it harder for them to what's it called, to adapt to playing the way they usually play. So, like for example, Man City, they've been struggling this season without Rodri. And even though we didn't really think that Rodri was that influential to the how they play, to how they defend, how they attack. Without them, they've struggled this season a little bit to kind of struggle to like create consistency in their gameplay, which allows teams to also counterattack. Because Rodri's very influential in how they play and how they play. So when teams lose key players, it's hard for them to kind of play the same way they want to without them. And I also think teams are moving away from the philosophy of playing out from the back, like how Pep, because a lot of teams in the previous season used to copy Pep's system in the sense that, if we play from the back, we can also gain a bit of possession, which you can also use to attack. But because they didn't have the quality of players, they weren't really playing to the strengths of their players, which made it easier for bigger teams to play against them. Now that they've adapted the low block system and they have a few players who are very influential and important to their team, they play to the strongest players' strengths, which allows them to make it harder for big teams to actually play, which makes it harder for some big teams to play against. So I think it's also a change of system that's making it harder for big teams as well.
Yeah, it's really an interesting topic to talk about. I'm sure we'll have so much to talk about that. But for me, like Ugum said, I agree with what you guys have mentioned. For me, it's mostly because of the distribution of resources, like you said, Ugum. Before, the TV rights used to go to the major teams in all these leagues. Real Madrid and Barcelona used to get a large chunk of their TV rights. If you come to England, the big seats. And since Wickham went to FIFA, he's been trying to push some of these policies to both UEFA and FIFA to distribute this well. So these teams now can afford not just to sign players, but to keep this talent when they don't want to sell them. Actually, So and I think the major factor in this is the PSL. Yes, these big teams have money, but they can't just spend it anymore because there's a percentage of money you cannot spend in a season. So if you make 100,000 last season or 100 million last season, you can't just go and spend 200 anymore. Now you have to spend something that I can't remember the percentage right now. So and that has made it possible for the smaller teams to begin to catch up because they can now afford players and also keep their player, because if you leave a team like Manchester United right now, they can afford to sign 7 players this summer. But because of PSL, they're not going to do it because they have to sell players first, bring income before they can sell. And if nobody's buying their players, then they cannot buy as well. So that makes it possible for those smaller teams that are going to shop from to keep those players and develop them and increase their quality and make it even more difficult for the bigger teams to win. So like Ugo mentioned, I think, I know you said as well, it's leveling up and it's interesting and it's good for football because before we used to go into games with suspense. A lot of games, when you're going to, I remember in those days going to play at Goodison Park. Everton was always a middle table team, but if you go there, you know that's going to be a difficult day at the office. So I think football is leveling up. Long may it continue.
May I add one more factor? One more factor is the influx of and the acceptance of brilliant young minds as coaches. More and more younger people are being allowed. You remember the EPL of 6-7 years ago. It kept recycling the likes of Sam Allardyce and the rest of them. They will move from job to job, from job to job. Now EPL teams are sensible enough to give the likes of Oliver Glasner, bring him in from Frankfurt, from Germany. Give people like Hosala, what's his name, that is coaching Brighton. Look at the way Brighton are playing. With a young coach that's not even up to 35. So, yeah.
And the Bournemouth coach too, Raola. Then he got to Flynn as well. Hansi Flynn is a young coach as well.
Yes.
So. And in Germany, you have Leverkusen with Alonso. You have a company with Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich company is coaching Bayern Munich, and I just won the trophy for them as well. So yeah, I think you're correct. I agree with you in bringing these young players with new philosophy and new having access to sports science in scientific way as well, and you know, data technology is out there for everybody, so it's no longer affordable for just for the big teams. Now anybody can have access to data and the science that is used to analyze players and performances and stuff like that. Like you said, Ubum, he has also helped with scouting and, you know, identifying talent all around the globe easily and accessible to all teams. So yeah, it's good and interesting to see.